For sure. I I struggled with my eating disorder for a long time before even entering the collegiate system. It was something that I had on again and off again throughout high school. And I tried for the longest time to get healthy while still running, which in itself I think was the problem for me. And I it's super hard to say this because I know for a lot of us runners, we make everything so time sensitive for like no reason. And being in the high school running system and the collegiate system does set you up for those time sensitive boundaries because you have conferences, you have uh, NCAA championships, and there's a lot of things that are time sensitive in the season. And being able to, if you're not going to run, making it a medical red shirt and taking that time off, it's just there's a lot of deadlines and dates. So that in itself kind of set me up to be stuck in this cycle of getting healthy and getting injured, because the truth of the matter was, even if I wasn't dealing with a injury per se, I wasn't healthy. There wasn't a period of time during that 4 years that I was healthy. When I entered the collegiate system uh, at 18, that my first semester of my freshman year, I was diagnosed with 3 stress fractures in my pelvis all at the same time. And I found out during that process, just because I, spent a lot of time on WebMD, the only 1% of runners get pelvic stress fractures. And I had 3 of them at the same time. And I couldn't put my pants on standing up, and I didn't think anything was wrong. And it, it takes like being removed from that situation to look back at it and be like, that was an insane period of time. And I can't believe I was living my life like that. But it was hard to stop yourself because, again, scholarships are involved. You, like I said, you have these dates that you want to get ready for. So you then, fine, you're injured, you can't run. Okay, so now I'm like stuck on a stationary bike or on an elliptical or in the pool for like 2 hours a day. And that in itself, I know everybody thinks cross training is the best thing in the world right now. It's very, very trendy. But that also depletes you in a different way. Just because it's a low impact style of training doesn't mean that doing 2 to 3 hours of it a day is it a good thing, because you're still depleting yourself. And if your body is already having a hard time recovering from what it is that you're doing, to the point where you're giving yourself these bone injuries, like, how are you supposed to get well at all during this process? So that's kind of what happened for 4 years. And it wasn't until I graduated, and even though I had probably enough eligibility to have a medical 6 year if I wanted to, I was just so demoralized that I just had no interest in running. And taking a step back from the sport and not being in the high school system or the collegiate system was when I made the most powerful steps in my recovery.
Yeah, it's not just about the question right now. I'll try to be delicate with this topic, but it is like on the clinical side, one of the hallmarks I see of somebody struggling is an excessive amount of cross training, and it's multifactorial. It's like, one, as you said, well, they probably can't do the running required at a healthy level to be able to train, but then also, two, I think when we're struggling or in the throes of disordered eating or injury cycles, we think we have to add more and more and more, which, as you said, depletes the body differently. Especially if we're not paying attention to like within our energy balance, if we're doing multiple hours and such. And so it is quite interesting. It's sad from my end because, you see on Instagram, I see these people doing all this stuff, and I'm like, I know what's going to happen in 3 months. Like, and I'm sure you see it too, right? Like,
All the
there
time.
it is. I know it's going to come, right? And it's so sad because as a coach and as a clinician, you want to like give them a big hug and tell them like what's going on and what the future is going to look like. But you just know that they're not going to listen anyways, right? Like, as you said, you're like, I
Correct.
don't do anything wrong, but I can't put my pants on right now with 3 fractures,
Yeah.
right? It's it's so sad. What do you think? Outside of stepping away from running, what were, if there's multiple, the pieces that really allowed you to beat that cycle? Because disordered eating is one of the most relapsed mental health disorders that we have across the spectrum. And so, what for you is got you out of it and has allowed you to come back to this sport in a healthy, safe, sustainable way? Like you're like 3 marathons in now, right? You must be doing
Mhm.
some good things. So what either got you out or what keeps you out of that cycle?
I think a big part of um, in that time where I stepped away from running, I learned that there's so much more to me than just being a runner. And running is such a massive part of who I am. And I always say running really was my first love. It was the first thing I ever fell in love with. And I still am obsessed with it to this day. Anytime I have the opportunity to talk to somebody about it, I do. That's how crazy I am about it. But there's so much more to me than just being a runner, so that when I do have to take time off, or like I need to take a second and take a step back, it doesn't feel like my world's collapsing around me. And I think that's what it felt like for the longest time, because when I would get these major bone injuries that I kept getting as a result of the disordered eating, would enter these super deep depressive states, because my entire identity was running. And if I couldn't run, it felt like my identity was being taken away. So I had to substitute with something else. So that's when my identity would become, well, I'm that girl who's going to cross train for 2 hours a day and come back fitter from her injury, which is not the point of having an injury. You're not necessarily supposed to come back fitter. You're supposed to, that's your body. When that something like that happens, that's your body asking you for rest. That's happens because, like you said, there's an energy imbalance. That's not because your body was trying to create an obstacle for you to overcome. You need to give your body what it needs so that you're able to come back stronger. And it may take time, but just because it takes time doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. And like I already mentioned before, time is so relative in the sport. We so many of us put so many time sensitive stamps on everything that we do, and that's why we end up in these messes in the first place.